Good day, good day. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Impact Podcast. We are so excited to be here with you today. Here's what I think is funny. It's not funny. I think it is destined, right? I believe everything happens for a reason. And so we are re-recording this episode with the Classroom Management Diva, Shanita Davis, for the second time, right? So we
Yes.
recorded Obiama and I recorded with Shanita 2 weeks ago, full episode, and we go
Full
back,
episode.
full episode. I'm talking went all the way in. My internet cut off, couldn't even do anything, and then the recording, you couldn't even hear it. It was just bad audio. And so we're like, Shanita, would you please bless us again and record? But here's what's interesting, because the topic that we had the first time was around classroom management. We wanted to talk about teaching out of the box and all of those things, which we still will touch on. But since then, in between that time of 2 weeks, there was a major rainstorm, right? It was a storm.
A hurricane, a Category 1 hurricane.
It turned into, because it wasn't supposed to be, right? Turned into a hurricane, um, category 1 hurricane.
Yes, it was actually supposed to be, it had downgraded to a tropical storm, and it was actually on its way to Austin, Texas. It took a detour and it came straight to Houston and it upgraded to a Category 1. So we weren't expecting this bad boy to come through at all. We were thinking that we were just going to get a little wind, a little rain, just kind of like the tail end of it. But we got the whole impact of it.
Not nice, not nice. Hurricane.
Right.
Was that Beryl? What did
That
y'all
was the
call
old Burl. You have to say it just like that. You got to say Burl.
it? Beryl, exactly. So Beryl swept through.
That's Burl.
Oh, Burl.
So
Yes.
I think it was timely. Again, we had that conversation the first time, but you heard her say that it wasn't expected. It was supposed to be one way, and then it turned into something else. And I thought it would be extremely timely to have a conversation around the unexpected, right? I'm telling you, I was so adamant. I told my team, I was like, I don't know what they'll have to say. We're going for about 2 weeks, and then we'll be back. That was not the case when the pandemic hit. That was not the case. And so the fact that you guys experienced this and it was unexpected, I thought it would be, again, very timely to have this conversation as childcare business owners, as educators, even for your family, yourself. How did that impact you guys? And let's have a conversation around that, because the truth of the matter is it can happen to any of us. It can be any unexpected circumstance. And until we talk about it, sometimes people don't necessarily know how to navigate it. So can we touch on what took place, right? Here's what was expected. This is what it will be, but here's what happened. And maybe we can unpack it a little bit and try to prepare for, again, we can't always prepare for the unexpected, but this conversation, I'm sure, will help many others. And welcome to
Absolutely.
it.
Well,
Tell us who you are too. I'm so sorry. I got excited.
it's all good. Well, let me introduce myself first. My name is Shanita Vital Davis. I am the Classroom Management Diva, aka Mrs. I'm here to help you get your ish together. And you guys know what I talk when I say the ish, we're talking about your influence, your saving, and your healing, because that's what we're all here to do. Influence, save, and heal. As anybody working in the education field, whether you are an administrator, or if you are an educator, or if you are CPR trainer, we're all here to be influential in what it is that we do. And I always say the reason that we don't have our ish together is because of our ignorance, the stuff that we don't know, the self-gratifying things that just feels better to us. My grandmother did it. Her grandmother did it. It feels better this way, so we don't want to change it. And then we come through the field as well with a lot of hurts, and that's what the H is for. I am a child care business owner myself, family home. I'm probably one of there, not very many of us are having agriculture programs. So that's one of the things that we have an agriculture program here in Texas for our students. I'm a registered trainer with the state of Texas. Actress, philanthropist, mother, friend, art therapist. So I have a few titles, a few hats, but my main love is early childhood education, and that's just my baby. So I love all those other things, but there's just something about getting to those spaces and helping those teachers to go through their healing process as well. So now that I have introduced myself, like Hope says, don't- um, so for us, Beryl, of course, I'm sure you guys, I was just talking to Mr. Maris, and she was talking about, some of the issues that she has faced, as far as going through, what was it? Um, what was it? Not hurricane, but it's the
9/11.
earthquake.
9/11.
The earthquake. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
9/11, 9/11 earthquake. And so in different demographics, we don't all face the same issues, because I would have never thought an earthquake, Philly. I don't know if it hit Philly or where it happened, but last thing that I would think of was earthquake Philly. And so everybody faces different types of weather in their, in the demographics of where they are, where they are centered. And so for us, some of the things that we face are like hurricanes, tornadoes, so that's weather related. Of course, we had the pandemic that swept through as well with COVID. And then, you have other things, the smaller things that come through the daycares, like hand, foot, and mouth disease. And so there are things from the minor to the major that occur in the child care field, in early childhood education, however you want to say it. But for us, we got hit with Beryl, which was a Category 1 hurricane. Now, here's the thing. We were prepared for Beryl to go the opposite way from where we lived. It was supposed to hit Austin, Texas. And that little sucker made a right, decided he wanted to come to visit the folks in Houston, and he was a storm. He graduated to a Category 1 hurricane just within less than 24 hours. Crazy, right? So nobody was prepared for a Category 1 hurricane.
And so,
Then you think,
so for some of us who don't get hurricanes, I feel like we've been having a touch of hurricanes I've never had before in the past couple of years. But what would a Category 1 hurricane look like? What did you guys experience?
so typically it's the impact of the wind and the water that it brings that determines how it's going to impact the elements. The things that are around you, like your house, your the trees and things like that. That also determines whether you should stay or whether you should leave. So this one didn't dump as much rain. It dumped a lot of rain, but not as much as we had with Harvey, because we had a hurricane hit there a few years ago, which was Harvey, but we had we had homes that were submerged in water, literally from the rooftop, where people had to be rescued on boats and things like that. With this one, it did send quite a bit of rain, so there was a lot of flooding, but not to the point to where it was people who were, a lot of people that died, like it happened with Harvey. So with this one, it was a lot of wind damage. And then there was still a lot of water damage. The winds got up to 80 miles per hour. So if you can imagine driving on a freeway and you're going through the impact of that hurricane for hours at a time. So when you're coming outside, you're seeing trees that may have been planted, that may be 100 years old, that are toppled over. They're pushed over. You're seeing roofs torn off. We had a church where the roof collapsed, and there was about, I think they said like 36 inches of water that was in that particular place. There were some areas that had low lying water areas, and so those particular areas were submerged in water. But so it's like you're in your home, everything is fine. You go through the windstorm and you come out and just imagine that everything is just like it's like the Wizard of Oz, like Kansas. It's like it doesn't look like it doesn't look like home anymore. And so that's what it was. It was the wind, the 80 miles per hour wind, and the water that was dumped in the city at the same time. So it was pretty bad.
Did you lose power?
I actually lost power for 5 days, and there are people that are still here that have no power at all.
I was looking that up on the news. I was looking at that. Yeah.
Yeah, so there no power. I've never seen so many electric companies. I didn't think that they had that many electric companies that were out there that had the capability of coming to Houston. I have seen from Ohio to New York. I mean, they're coming from all over. And yet, because we've had so much to impact the city within these past few years, you have Harvey, and then we just had an Arctic blast that came through that, messed up the power lines. And then back to back, you had hurricanes that just only happened about a month or so ago that came through. And now you have this particular hurricane. And so our power system is so jacked up because of the impact of all of this stuff that right now today, there are people that are still without power.
Wow.
Because they have to fix all of the damage that's been done over the years.
I mean, that kind of reminds me.
Go
ahead.
Go ahead.
That kind of reminds me. I was just gonna say, it reminds me of right after Hurricane Maria. When we went to Puerto Rico, and that was I think it was a Category 5 hurricane.
Wow.
Puerto Rico. So you could just imagine. And there was another hurricane when I was in Puerto Rico right after Maria that came in. It was a smaller one, but I was in Puerto Rico. And what was interesting to me was I was leaving the next day, right before the hurricane supposedly was going to hit. And 24 hours before that hurricane was hitting, there was water coming in from the sea out into the actual land, like over the highways. And I went to go eat at this restaurant. They have like this deck that oversees the sea, and they're all talking about this. And I said, "Is anything wrong?" And they say, "Oh yeah, the ocean took the deck," and they were just so calm.
Yeah,
they were so calm, like it was such a norm to them. Because it's something that they're so used to, right? Seeing a hurricane, they were okay. They were sitting around drinking beers, eating while their deck was flying away, washing away. I called the airport. I was like, I need to leave now, like right now. But
right.
I felt those winds, and it was so it was powerful, right? And it was very scary, right? So I'm wondering, like, and it made me think of the childcare. There's a lot of Head Start programs in Puerto Rico, and thinking about their emergency response, right? We talked a little bit now about 9/11, and I feel like we are being, we're a little bit better now than when 9/11 happened, right? Because there was a childcare center in right by the Twin Towers, and when the towers went down, they were able to evacuate the children and put the children on a boat. No, the parents couldn't find the kids for days. They thought they were underneath this rubbish, right? Because there was no focus on an emergency response, right, or emergency evacuation, like in the event of for childcare spaces, right?
Definitely.
That's why everybody started like really reviving this. But you're not used to in Houston, Texas, a hurricane. I mean, if you go to Puerto Rico, Hurricane 1 is like a wind, like, you know what I mean? Like I say, so but you're not used to that. So how do we train our staff, our teachers, to an emergency response of what if, right? What if this happens, like what happened with the hurricane, with the earthquake, right? We had
Right.
it doesn't happen a lot in Philadelphia, and I assessed all of my staff, and none of them did the right thing, and I trained them till I was blue in the face, right? So is it
Right.
to really think about those things, and how do we really prepare to make sure that our children and students are safe?
So the one thing that you have to always do, always make sure first that your parent contacts are always up to par. That's the main thing, is to make sure that your parent contact information is always up to par. I don't know if you guys do it like quarterly, if you guys, if there's a system that you have in place where you could send a check in, or parents make sure if there's anything that's changing, something that you put in your newsletter monthly. So always make sure that your parents' contact information is up to date. The second thing that you want to do is, of course, go over all of your drills in an event that you have a hurricane. Well, I'm not going to say a hurricane, because with the hurricane, you have time. You have at least a little time to leave. So we would have had some, maybe like about 24 to 48 hours to leave, but that's not a lot of time for some people, because you have people that are scrambling for gas. You have people that are looking for hotels. So you're not finding a lot of those places to go to, and you're not able to get fuel. So you have people that are rushing to try to find these things. So one of the things that you want to do is deviate from always using your debit cards. Make sure that you have a cash stash somewhere. Because what happens is that a lot of the machines and things like that, they weren't working. So you're going to a gas station and you're not able to get fuel, for one, because either the gas has run out or the machines are down and they're not able to take any of the cards, because everybody is trying to do the same thing at one time. So the machines are malfunctioning. We don't realize how important cash is, because we're so caught up in the system of debit cards and credit cards and things like that. Another thing is that you want to be able to have, I'm going to say, a safe center, a safe place where you can store things like canned goods, where you can store things like blankets, where you can store things like, those non-perishable items. And then if it's a long time before you have those issues, then you take those things before they expire and you donate them to a food bank, you re-up. Allow your parents to be involved in the process as well, because that's a major thing. We're having a food drive this time around, and also make sure that you put toys in there as well, because we found that a lot of our students, when they were displaced, they didn't bring their toys with them. And so it was a very uncomfortable situation, because you don't have power, so you cannot use a lot of your tablets and things like that. So that's another reason why we should deviate from using these, utilizing electronic devices to soothe our children, where they need to get into the natural elements of things like playing board games. Here at our preschool, and I'm not sure if you guys do the same thing, but they play board games. We don't have like a lot of the electronics and things like that. They play board games here. They know how to play things like Candyland, and they know how to play like not so much Monopoly, but I could show you here in our little section, we have all sorts of board games to keep them occupied, so they're not so bored. That's another thing. So that's with the children. Another thing that you want to make sure that you do is, of course, doing those drills monthly with your staff. And then you want to designate a person that is strong, that can lead everybody. Because it's like what you said, Damaris, in the face of danger, we all still have that fight, flight, or freeze. Even though we're adults, we still all possess those same responses to fear. And so there is always somebody that could be designated as the captain, or the person who's going to get everybody out safely, or who's going to tell everybody to do this, or to make sure that this is done. And so that's a major thing, is to have a designated person to do that. Another thing that made me realize how far off I was is that when my parents were in need of certain things financially, I did not put myself in position to support them. And so I had to reach out for the support. And it wasn't the best feeling in the world. It took me forever. I think, Aaliyah, you guys know about that part, but it took me forever to reach out to say, hey, my parents could probably use X, Y, and Z. It's hard when you have a parent that calls you on the phone and says, Miss Vital, all of my food is gone. And, for that particular parent, her child had special needs when it came to food because he's allergic to everything. So he can't eat everything. So that's something that you want to tell your parents. If you know that you have a child that has special needs when it comes to food, and typically when you have a child that's allergic to everything, a lot of stuff that they have to have is more natural, because a lot of the canned goods and things like that have preservatives and all sorts of things in there that they can't have. So how do you prepare a parent for that? Because they have to know too what happens when things like this arise. And so I just wanted to make sure that I never have to go through that ever again, is making sure that financially I put myself in position. So what if this does happen, I'm able to service those parents as well, because it's kind of hard to say, okay, I'm connected to all of these different resources, but some of those resources cannot get to you. And even if they are sending things to you, if you can't use your debit card or your credit card, it's going to defeat the purpose.
Yeah.
What do you do?
You made some really great points, including, right, money, Wi-Fi, cell phones, even families, right? Because we do a lot of time, we do drills on site. And not only monthly are we required to do fire drills, but also different emergencies. And so this makes me think about, I don't even want to say getting more creative, but really looking at different emergencies. Again, we can't prepare for everything because we don't know what will happen, but like a lot of ideas was running through my head, including, right? So when we have fire drills, we do change the position, meaning, okay, well, it's not at the front of the building, maybe it's at a different exit. And so everyone has to kind of think strategically and problem solve and figure out a way to get out safely. But what about if we are rotating responsibility just to kind of get people in, just to experience what it's like to have to make quicker decisions? And now I have to be in a leadership position. It also makes me think of, we have family meetings, but are we also helping families to prepare for emergencies, prepare for a fire at home, prepare for the may come? Right. It gives you so much to think about. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm about to put together something to have with families for us to think about. I remember we've seen on the news active shooters going in.
Absolutely.
Right? That's something that we never had to worry about. I know for us, we're in Philadelphia and we do have gun violence here. And I remember one of my sites, which is in a neighborhood where we have experienced this before, where you're playing outside and now they're shooting in the neighborhood. That was another drill that we had to figure out and say, okay, well, how do we get our children, safe? And so this is such a great conversation to just prepare ourselves, including because now requires us to put in our emergency plan, contingency plans, even around finances. Like, so what happens if you have to shut your business down? How can you sustain your business? And I think that's a conversation too that we need to start, looking at. And my first thought, wait a minute, there's no reason for continuity of care. Yes.
Continuity of care. Yes. Yes.
So that's something that you guys have to do in your city.
So it's a regulation. It is a regulation. We have to have a continuity of care plan. So basically, we also have to have a shelter in place, which is really
Mhm.
what you described. With the shelter in place is what all the canned foods and emergency update. That's why we're always asking for emergency numbers and updates and everything. Some families are really bad. They're horrible with that. They'll change their phone numbers, their cell phone numbers 25,000 times, and they won't give it to the childcare programs, right? Or their
And you don't
teachers.
know until it's an emergency when you're calling.
Absolutely. So
Right.
I always, I'm very notorious. I'm a stickler for emergency preparedness and supervision.
That's awesome.
My staff knows that when I come in the building, they're like, oh, here she comes. They know that I am that person that walks in the building and pulls the fire stations.
Love it.
2, 3, 4, they have to just be ready, right? For me, because I want to make sure that our children are safe at all times. And I always tell them I'm pretty easygoing. If you don't do a lesson plan or a curriculum or something as far as like you didn't meet this, I could live with that. I cannot live with a supervision breach, and I cannot live with a health and safety breach. So those are two things that I'm really, really a stickler for, and is an
That's
author.
awesome.
They know it. Um, a couple things that I wanted to also add. One of them is medication. So
Yes.
you have children. You mentioned children, that have allergies, but there's children that has asthma, and not only children but staff as well. So if
Absolutely.
staff and you're going to be in a shelter in place, they have to be with you at all times, for a long period of time, maybe. It is very important to also collect the medications for those staff members and have emergency numbers to those staff members, because if one of those staff members actually code or something happens where they faint or whatever, right? You have to be able to respond quickly to try to contact someone. And unless you know the staff member personally, you're not going to know who to contact, right?
Absolutely.
I had a staff member that
I'm gonna play to you. Well, I'll let you guys finish talking. I have to get something. I don't know. I just realized that my battery is low.
oh
So you guys, I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize that. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, hold on. Well, y'all can finish the conversation. I'll be back.
No problem.
yeah, I had a staff member that had diabetes, and he had a shock, and thank God I had his information, emergency contact, and I was able to call and kind of ease him, right? He didn't have to worry about anything. I was going to ask him, hey, who do I call? Because some people are just not coherent and they're not able to respond, right? So it's really important. It's funny she said battery, but my battery is dying too.
That's okay. We're so busy throughout the day, and sometimes we don't realize it until it happens. Listen, and that's
I have everybody looking at their batteries now.
Yeah, listen, my battery saver.
and that's all right. We're gonna get charged up. But what I'm going to do in preparation for for this episode, I want to make sure that we put in some link or a link or two where our listeners can have a resource or two, but even share. So if you are watching this, listening, and you have a resource that is helpful for childcare owners, families, community resources, please share it. That way we all are collecting this information and we're not waiting until something happens and trying to find the information. I think these are the moments where we can reflect. Thankfully, everyone is well enough to be here, but now that we are, what can we do, as we come together, right? Damaris mentioned you were in New York when 9/11?
I sure was. Sure was.
Wow.
Listen, I couldn't fathom, I remember watching it on the news, right? And like, I was in a totally different industry. I remember that. And so I think we all have experiences where we go from to say, here's a resource that I have. Let me share it with you. And you have one, and you have one, because our audience is from all different states and it's not just one. So I think
Absolutely.
this is timely conversation. Here's what I want for sure. I know for us, we get a
You
max
broke
of.
up a little bit, Aaliyah.
Now, why is that? How about now?
Hey, I can hear you.
Okay. I know here in Pennsylvania we have a limit to our closure days.
Mm-hmm.
How were you guys affected, if at all? Right? You couldn't, for many of you, I could imagine, you couldn't operate. So
No.
what does that look like from a business perspective where you couldn't open, right? The city wasn't even open. How does that impact you guys from a business perspective in regards to having to close your programs?
So the majority of our parents, we have a lot of them that have the subsidy care. And then some of them, of course, they pay out of pocket. Um, a lot, it was, I think it was kind of like a blessing for our school, in a sense, um, because well, I'll say financially for us, it wasn't good. Let me take that back. It wasn't good, um, because we're a family home. And so it not only affects um, I guess you can say the parents, but financially it affects you because you lose your food, you lose all your food. So you have to gain that. It does impact the employees because, of course, they're not getting paid. And you have teachers that have been out for like 5 days, 5 full days, the whole entire week. It was 7 because it was the preparation day, which would have been the Thursday, and then the Friday we closed down, and so they didn't come back until this Monday. So it's like
Okay.
7 days that they would have missed from work. The beauty of it is that um, we are connected to Workforce Solutions. And so they are in the process of having some of those funds for our teachers be reimbursed. As far as the parents are concerned, some of them were able to pay, some of them were not because they weren't prepared, so they had to evacuate. Um, and so we're still in the process of really trying to figure out um, the what how it has really impacted us. You know, we hadn't gotten to that place yet. Um, but I will tell you, for me, it's made me very different,
Mm.
very, very, very different on how I conduct business. Because when you're in family home, you don't think about how great the impact, how great it could be, considering that you have a twofold situation here. You know, and so I think that anybody that's in that situation should really rethink how they do business, because a lot of us, even though I felt like I was operating um, from a business perspective, I wasn't operating in a healthy business perspective. It
Mm.
wasn't healthy enough. Um, you don't have the systems that are in place. You believe that you do. Um, and it kind of brings me back to Aaliyah when I contact you and I was like, no, I don't want that. I just kind of want to work on this. And I'm like, I think I need to be working on some other stuff. Um, and that's with the services that you offer, Aaliyah, and making sure that, you know, even if it's a home, that it is run like a business, that you have those contingency funds put aside. And, you know, you think that you have them, but you don't realize that you don't have them because it's a twofold situation. I'm having to look out for my family and yours. You get what I'm saying? And so, yeah. So we're still in that process of trying to figure out how it what it really looks like. But for me right now, it wasn't the best experience at all. At all.
And
It's
so
one of
what I
those
can
things where
imagine,
you say, I will never want to be in this situation again.
got you. Yeah, and I feel like we're having more and more of those moments, though. Unfortunately, right? Things are happening, and it seems like in so many different areas, right? And they're all out of our control, which is really tough. And here's what I can imagine, even having this conversation with you, is we're not even talking about the mental health aspect or the moment. Like, where's the moment to even be like, what just happened? Am I
Yes.
okay? My family okay? And then you also mentioned families reaching out to you from a resources standpoint, right? Things that are tangible, but what about the conversations that are needing to be had with your children, your family, do you serve? Has there been any supports around that? What would you say, childcare owners or teachers, educators, how to be able to even address that part? Because I can imagine how difficult that is to come back, have class in session, and act like we're just going to jump back into circle time, which we're going to
Right.
have circle time, but that conversation has to be different even in that space because children experience some things even during that time. How has that been thus far?
And let me just, before you answer that, Shanita, I'm so sorry, but let me just also add, and this is why for these past 3 years since COVID, post COVID, we have seen an increase in children with challenging behaviors,
Absolutely.
right? Where before, we had children with challenging behaviors. It was a high percentage, right? Especially those in Black and brown children. Let's just keep it real, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But now we're seeing that double, that like the numbers are doubling and the resources are less now. So, looking away like, okay, COVID happened. We're going to go through all this trauma. It's okay. You lost 15 people in your family. It's okay. You were scared to come outside. It's okay that, we just need to go back to normality because the city and the state needs their money back. We need to function somehow, right?
Right.
There was no emphasis in providing our students, our families, or anyone with, that mental health component, that support system. Like, let's talk about this, and how can you go ahead and jump back, right? So, past COVID this year, and I'm just going to say this very openly. I had a family that came in, beautiful family. He was a second year returning student with family. Dad drops him off the first week of school, and you know the story. Um, Drops him off in first week of school. He says to his son, I'll be back. I love you, whatever." Walks off, says goodbye to us like everybody, just a normal day. Goes home and commits suicide. So
Mm.
these are things that that the impacts of the tragedies of COVID. And to this day, I still know people that are traumatized from 9/11.
Absolutely.
Now
That
imagine.
is so Aaliyah has had the opportunity to um experience my story and what it is that I do. So that is one of the major things that I do focus on because I am both. I am that child that experienced the severe trauma, but also being that teacher that's in the classroom with the unresolved trauma. And so it's hard to form a connection. You feel like you are, but there is the difficulty of forming a connection with those students. And we know that I don't care what the circumstances may be, the main thing is in order for you to be successful in helping those students and also yourself is to form connections, whether it's a connection with your boss, because that gives you the opportunity to be able to voice what is going on with you, and that comes with transparency. And that's something that I am very open about, being very transparent about my life. And so what it does is it leaves others uh, the safe space to be able to open up as well. And so I think that in all getting and learning, that as the directors and the supervisors, that we have to have transparency too. And so when we speak about mental health and we speak about these things, you have to understand that there are people that are coming to your school community, because your school is a community within itself. I am coming into this community where nobody really knows or understands me, and I can't really I can't really be as expressive as I would like to, because we don't have these conversations. So how can I tell you that I had a parent tell me that, Miss Vital, I feel like, taking my children's lives. But it only took for me to share my story with her, and not that I felt the need to take somebody's life, but I expressed to her what I had gone through in my lifetime. And so that allowed her, and this is a parent, because it's hard to do that. It's hard to, remain in the business, because we continue to look at things from a business perspective, and that's great. But there are times that it could be, you could still operate from a business perspective and still open yourself up, so that the people that you are assigned to, because I'm going to say it's an assignment, that you are assigned to, are able to come to you and have those hard conversations about what is going on with them. And sometimes, we don't make the space for them to do that. So when we speak about mental health, and we're saying that, people are not talking about it, they're not doing this. Oftentimes it's because we're not sharing our stories. Oftentimes it's because we're not opening the doors for them to be able to have those conversations. And that's what kind of makes it a little bit worse. When it comes to the children, it's going to boil down to patience. It all boils down to patience and connection. If I can connect with you, if I can be patient with you through your process, then I have a greater chance of being able to reach you before you make the mistake, or before you continue to go down this road of destruction, because that's typically what happens when you see teachers firing off in the classroom, or you see the admins that get up and they just quit, because there's not a lot of real connection. It's like, I'm in this space. The only way I feel like I have to leave is because I'm not connected to something here. That's why husbands leave their wives, and wives leave their husbands. That's why parents, they have babies and they leave their children in the hospital, because they are unable to form a connection. And if there's anything that you will want to do in your space, is to make sure that you are forming connections and having the transparency. And, I think Aaliyah had spoken to me once and was saying how Obi comes in and works with her staff. And so they are able to have that transparency. And so it's important. It's important to provide that. If I'm not being too long-winded.
No, because here's the thing that I know about you. I know that we were about to go into your wheelhouse. I know that is your space. We definitely need a part two, because we didn't even get to go into, I love where we're going, running out of time, but what we will do after this is we will schedule another, because we didn't even get to tap into, we were going into the mental health for the children and families. And I know what we spoke about on the recording that we couldn't post was what you do in a unique way at your program to help connect with children you offer such an amazing resource to them, for children who may have special needs behaviors, or just because. And it boils back down to connection. And that's such a great point. I saw a post, I think it was yesterday, and it was really talking about our younger generation and how we may look down on the fact that they job hop, if you want to call it, that they don't stay at one place for a long time. But what it was saying was that we're not the problem. We just don't stay in a place that we don't feel connected to, or that isn't healthy for us. And that's what it made me think of, that connection. And you're absolutely right. Once that connection isn't there, then what am I here for, right? There's no growth that's happening. And it also made me think about, for example, Damaris touched on this, and it was when she said there's times, right, if a lesson plan isn't turned in on time. Or I remember for a long period after we came back from, I was concerned about those things, those regulations. I was trying to get through. People were just trying to make sure that they were healthy in their bodies and were healthy mentally. And that was the focus. And so we still don't want to lose connection with our people. And it's okay to pause. It's okay to not be so focused on here's what we can say. If we need to be in circle time 10 minutes longer because we're connecting with babies and having a conversation that they clearly need, then that's what we need to do. And the same with families. I'm not going to act like there's not a lot on childcare business owners or providers, because we wear so many hats. We all know that, and it's a lot, especially when we have our own families and we're working through our own mental health. And, we're all just trying to make it, but we are so committed to this work and helping families. Like, you're going through this, but you are working to provide resources for a family. And so this is just such a powerful conversation. I don't want it to end here, but we have to wrap up this episode. Here's what I can promise. We will be back. We will be back. Absolutely. Because you guys don't even understand. We didn't even get to talk about the trauma-informed art therapy that she offers. And so we really have something that we have to talk about. She has so many skills, and like, you are one dynamic mosaic sister. And I want to make sure people get to experience that. So thank you so much for joining us again. You gave us your time again. And we're going to have to be a little selfish and ask for one more time so that we can really share with the people. I would love to get farther into that conversation around whether it's trauma-informed practices, taking it into the classroom in a creative way, because we also didn't get to talk about the amazing classroom management diva who brings that into the classroom every day. And so as we wrap up the episode, if you could tell us, how can the people get in contact with you until they see you again on the next podcast?
You can go, I'm typically on Facebook. So I just say go to my Facebook page at Classroom Management Diva. I don't do a lot of social media. I typically have people that call me. You can call my phone. I know don't all call at one time, but my phone number is 281-380-6997. I do have a website that you guys are able to go to, and that is really the one that's linked to the school. So that is Miss Vital Station Academy. And so you guys can go on there as well. Most everything that I do has just been word of mouth. So I don't really have, I got to get that stuff together, but I don't have a lot of it.
That's all right. You're doing what you need to do, how you need to do it. And until we can connect again, I want to say again, thank you so much for joining us. It was such a powerful conversation. Thank you all for joining us. Leave your comments. What questions do you have? Leave a resource. Everybody drop a resource, and all of us dropping one together creates a pool of resources for everyone. So thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, we
Absolutely.
are the Impact Podcast. Have a good one.
Have a good one.